very, very, very happy and thankful for being here this morning. I'm very happy to share with you our culture and our passion and taste some wonderful things. I'll just go through a little bit of an overview of what we'll be doing. So we'll start our morning just basically tasting two types of olive oil, a grocery type of olive oil, and then our own olive oil that we import from Puglia. We're each going to have a shot, and then we're going to cleanse our palate with our pane pugliese. We'll talk a little bit about that, get your thoughts, share some opinions, and then from that, we are going to go through a very interesting part of the class, which is making the cavatelli. We are going to make some spelt cavatelli. We'll show you how to make the dough, talk a little bit about the flours. Maybe we'll have some volunteers come up and try to shape some cavatelli. And then after that, we'll taste the cavatelli and then have a question and answer period. So, are you ready to have a shot of olive oil? Okay, so may I get the wonderful helpers that volunteered to come up and help? Thank you so much.
You want to start first?
Yeah, they'll start handing. Do you want to start talking about the just olive oil in general? See?
Yeah, so we have extra virgin olive oil here. Mm-hmm. So the most
just wait to taste it till everyone has one. Sorry to interrupt you.
The most important things about extra virgin olive oil, I would say, it's the acidity. Yeah, like there are different kind of olive oil. In Italy, we have 250 million tree of olive trees, and there are different kind of olive oil. So extra virgin, and just olive oil and pomace. So the acidity level decide, let's say, the quality of olive oil. Here we have extra virgin, so the acidity has to be lower than 1%. Our olive oil, Terroni olive oil, has an acidity that is lower even than that. And you'll be able to taste the difference from the olive oil that you're trying right now. It's of course cold pressed. So our olive oil is cold pressed in Puglia. Coratina olives is the kind of olives that is used to make this olive oil. And yes, if you are, please try the olive oil now. And yeah, you can try with bread too if you want, of course. And
so the one that you have in front of you is the grocery store one. And just to kind of just do a very quick overview of what the differences might be. I'm hiding the bottle just because I don't really want to publicly disrespect an olive oil. But so when we're looking for olive oil, what differentiates different types of olive oil, right? We talked about different kinds of olive oil. We've got extra virgin, we've got olive oil, we've got pomace oil, right? How do you know what to use or what to cook with, and what is a good olive oil to have in your pantry, and how do you decide, right? It's interesting because when you think about it, like Ruben said, there are 250 million olive trees in Italy, like thousands of varietals. How do you know what olive oil to cook with? When you try a grocery store olive oil like the one that you're tasting, sorry, which have you passed around?
Yeah, now it's ours. It's going with ours now.
Okay, so the second one is the Pugliese one. The first one that you got is the grocery store one. I'm just gonna make sure that we also have a tasting so we can try it together. I'll give you a tablespoonful. So one thing that you want to note when you're tasting olive oil is you're having a shot. You want it to coat completely your mouth, right? So you're going to take it, really fully cover your mouth, and then try to breathe in to just kind of get a little bit of the nuances of the olive oil. When you taste something like this, it tastes fine, like you're tasting the oil. It's not a bad taste, right? Now, what I'd like you to do is go ahead and try to do the exact same thing with our olive oil.
You see also the colors difference in the one from Terroni.
So once you have this one, as Ruben said, you'll note like a different kind of darker color, but try to give it you might find it's quite fresh and pungent and spicy, right? So what you're tasting is 100% Coratina olive, which is a very, very spicy olive from southern Italy, from Puglia in particular. This olive oil reaches the bottle within 24 hours of being harvested. So it is harvested. The olives never touch the ground, which really, really helps with keeping a very low level of acidity, which is below 0.2%. And of course, you cannot taste acidity when you taste acidity in olive oil, but it will express its qualities through the flavor of it. So you'll find that an olive oil that has a very low acidity is pungent, it will taste bitter, it will taste a little like wheatgrass, like really, really sort of, and it'll hit the back of your throat. That means it's a very fresh olive oil.
It is also cold pressed.
And it's cold pressed. So if you're in the grocery store and you're trying to figure out what to get, like things that might help you out is looking for olive oil that maybe is made with only one olive. When you get an olive oil that's like the grocery store olive oil, you'll find it has always a very similar profile. And the reason why they're able to do that is from year to year, they're able to balance the flavor profile of the oil by using different amounts or engineering it a bit differently. Whereas an olive oil like ours, it's 100% Coratina oil, will express itself differently every year, depending on the type of weather that they had that year, how much water they had. Every year, it would be a different expression of the olive, and that's sort of the beautiful thing. And we have that all the time when we have customers come in and they'll say, well, this olive oil tasted completely different last year. And that's true, it's 100% true, because we're not trying to provide the same olive oil, but we're really just trying to have the best expression of the oil, of the olive.
Like wine, every year changes a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Because like Giovanna saying, the quantity of water, the temperature of the season. And to make an olive oil like this one, it's way harder, because Giovanna was saying the olives, they don't touch the ground. It's cold pressed in the first 24 hours. The bottle, it's like darker, so the light doesn't really affect the olive oil too much. So many steps to have like an amazing product.
So the factors that will affect that level of acidity, like we said, is the ripeness of the olive itself, the storage conditions of the olive, so how it's kept from the time that it's picked to the time that it's pressed, how it travels, like the processing, the fact that it's cold pressed. All these things come into play and are very, very important. And it's the difference between a $30 bottle of olive oil and a $15 bottle of oil. It's really important to note that there's a completely different process of olive oil making. So when you're choosing an olive oil, it's important that you choose an olive oil in which you're able to investigate those things. So if you can find out the level of ripeness of the olive, the way the olive was stored, the way it was processed, the way it was harvested, those are all important things to consider. So it's important that you choose someone that is able to share all those things with you. And we're proud to have this because we actually purchase a lot of the olive oil that they produce. We're able to go there and see how they're producing it. We think that really, really transcends to the olive oil. And the perfect match for that olive oil is the bread that was brought around to be tasted with the olive oil, which is our pane pugliese, which literally means pane from Puglia. And it's a bread that is made in the Altamura style. So it's actually, pane di Altamura is one of the first baked goods to ever receive a denomination for being sort of like an artisanal type of bread and following tradition in its making. We follow that exact same tradition, including actually importing the flour from Altamura, from a small mill in Altamura. And it's completely naturally leavened. It's made with our mother yeast, which came from Italy. And we're very proud to serve that along with our olive oil as just like a free taster when people sit down to our tables, as a way to welcome them, because we feel it really tells a lot about our culture and our traditions. So moving on from pane pugliese and our olive oil tasting, we can go ahead and start making some cavatelli. The cavatelli actually come from southern Italy in a similar area of where the pane pugliese come from. So they also use semola rimacinata, which is this kind of flour here. Rimacinata means milled twice, right?
Yes.
Do you want to talk a bit about it? And
Yeah. So Giovanna, she will show you how to make cavatelli. So she's using, like she said, two kind of flour, the rimacinata, the semola rimacinata, and the spelt flour. So the semola rimacinata is like a very a very high content of protein. So you see that Giovanna, she actually is making the dough with no eggs. Again, because the semola rimacinata having a high content of protein, you will be able to keep the dough together without any support. Of course, Giovanna now she will have to work it and create, the bond in between the protein, create gluten. She's also using a spelt flour. That is something not always common, I would say. In Italy it's called farro. It's kind of disappeared for a while from Italian cooking in the last century, but now is coming back for its properties. Farro is a little harder to work because the grain has to be clean in a different way, and is a little more harder, like I say, to get the grain out from the plant. But it's very rich in minerals, in protein, and it's actually like a really good grain for you. And it's also lower in calories compared to wheat. Giovanna here, she's mixing 50% semola rimacinata, the durum wheat flour, and the spelt flour, and she's creating the dough, and after she will show you how to make the cavatelli. Cavatelli is a very traditional pasta in Puglia. Everything we're making today is coming, let's say, from the Puglia region, and very traditional shape that actually maybe after you can also show like an orecchietta.
Yes, so cavatelli is actually the oldest pasta that was ever made because of its shape. It's so easy to make, and it has no eggs in it. It's just made with flour and water. So they found it traveled really, really well. So they started making it and taking it on voyages, and thank you. And it's where orecchiette come from, strascinati, capunti, all those pastas sort of came from cavatelli. Cavatelli developed later as the need to dry it better emerged, because by flipping it, so you'll see here we sort of have like kind of like a thick sort of nubby kind of noodle. Flipping it enabled it to dry quicker. So once they figured that out, they started making orecchiette because it traveled better and it dried quicker. So that's why. So basically, I'm kneading the dough here, and what I'm trying to do is create a very elasticy and malleable dough, but also a very, very sort of like hard dough that, like, if you feel that when it gets to be quite hard. The reason why is because we will need it to have sort of low moisture to be able to keep its shape. There's very little, it's not quite malleable as like an egg-based pasta would be. It doesn't have the same level of elasticity. But what it does do is, because of its high protein content and the type of gluten that it develops, it can hold its shape. So that's kind of what we're aiming for. And my kneading process is sort of building a bit of gluten. The spelt flour in itself, it's basically impossible to just mix 100% spelt flour and get cavatelli. So naturally, they would mix it with semola rimacinata. The other reason is because spelt just doesn't have the same kind of yield as regular wheat does. It has a much lower yield. So it was often just mixed with other flours.
And I do love this shape because when you cook it in the sauce, some of the sauce will get trapped in the middle of the pasta. So it's actually like really good.
And I know Ruben said that we're making a type of cavatelli pugliese, but actually cavatelli just come from just north of Puglia. And they're made a little bit different in every region, whether they have ridges or whether they're smooth. And their size also varies from region to region and from province to province within the region itself. They're all very, very important things. And you can be eating these cavatelli that maybe are the way they make the in Altamura, but if you change the size a bit, you're either making a completely different shape or you're like in a completely different geographic area.
Sure.
Do you want to tell them a little bit about? Yes.
Yes. So while Giovanna is making the pasta, later we'll try the pasta with again some ingredients that were used in the Puglia cuisine. So here we have some tomatoes. Those are pretty special. They are tomatoes. Again, they come from close to Foggia, and they are harvested by a group of 14 women that they really care about what they do. So the soil doesn't get any water from them. It's all natural. The tomatoes, they are hand peel and hand harvest from the plant when they're perfectly ripe. And and they're jar, and that's it. There is only tomatoes. It's the only ingredients in the jar, and you see the difference in the toast from a normal store-bought tomato. The sauce here is a very classical sauce, some garlic, some chili, the tomato from the jar, and a little bit of basil. The sauce gets finished traditionally with ricotta squanta, that is a cheese very similar to ricotta, but it gets aged a little bit, right?
And fermented, yes.
Fermented. It's very interesting, the flavor. It will give some acidity to the sauce, but it's really interesting. It will also keep the sauce together, create a nice consistency, and we'll finish with ricotta salata. Ricotta salata is very similar to the ricotta cheese that everyone knows, but it gets pressed and treated with salt. So I would say the consistency in between a ricotta and a pecorino. Again, give a nice saltiness to the pasta, to the finished product. All traditional way to cook like a pasta al pomodoro.
So the really cool thing that I want to highlight is that all of these ingredients really come from the same area. We're not really traveling far. We've got the olive oil and the bread, of course, the flours, the tomatoes. They all come from a very close area from one another. And that's sort of the beauty of the Mediterranean diet, is really, really local, right? You don't really need to mix any additional flavors. Like Ruben was saying, those tomatoes don't even get water or artificial water. When you taste the tomatoes, because they have no artificial hydration, you'll taste it, you'll get a bit of savoriness, and you're just like, what am I tasting? How is there no salt? And the savoriness comes from the sea, because the type of hydration that it gets is off the sea. So it's sort of spectacular when you're eating it, and you just... But I think it's really one of the values of eating regionally and eating locally, is that if you're willing to take that adventure, you're really opening your palate to tasting all of these wonderful things that just happen organically and naturally. So, I for one, I'm really proud to be able to have these ingredients and to share that experience that I love. That I grew up with, all those flavors in their purest form. And I think one cool thing about the ricotta squanta you'll taste when we make it, that gets added right at the end. And what it does is sort of augments all the flavors. It sort of harmonizes everything, but also opens up everything. So you'll get hopefully a real explosion of flavor on your palate. So
Giovanna really cared about bringing ricotta squanta because it's so special. I am from Liguria. I didn't know what it was. I never heard it before, but it's pretty cool.
So one thing that I want to tell you is I've mixed the dough, and of course a few things I want to talk about. One, I've kneaded it by hand. Normally when we knead this, I knead it for quite a bit longer, so that it's a lot harder. You might be saying, Chef, why aren't you using a KitchenAid? I really recommend, you'll see a recipe up at the end. If you want to try it at home, you always mix it with your hands. the amounts of a pasta recipe are always, you really have to feel it. You kind of have to understand the moisture level. You kind of have to understand what you're going for, and then try to achieve it. And it's best done with your hands. And once you've done it a few times with your hands, then you can go ahead and mix it in your mixer. But very important, the dough needs to rest for at least a half an hour to let all the enzymes kind of settle, and then it'll become sort of malleable and ready for us to make. And now we would love to show you some cavatelli. Is there anyone who would like to make some? You're welcome to come up. We have some aprons and some knives. We could take maybe 3 volunteers if they'd like to come up. Yeah, come on up. Come on up. So we have a magic of television dough that we made yesterday. So it has already rested. Questa è pronta, grazie. There's some aprons there. I'm just going to clean this because we will need the counter to be a bit wet. Francesco, you want the cavatelli? Come on. Okay. So here we are. I'm just going to rinse my hands. 1 second. You're going to do the same? Yeah. That's it. Okay. Okay, so we'll start with cavatelli, and if anybody is, we'll see that if anybody's like a really good student, we'll get them to make orecchiette. So, this has to stay here, huh? We can make some space there. Okay, I'm gonna give everybody a bit of this. So the dough is a little dry. Let me know when you're ready, and we can start going with it. Come on up. Take a little corner. We'll move my computer out of the way. Oh, bravissimo Francesco. Okay, so we'll make cavatelli. Then if you're good, we'll show you orecchiette. And if you're not, we'll do strascinati. Okay, so let's take everybody take a piece of dough. If you can, just wet your hands with this a little bit because the dough is a little dry. I want to make sure you've got enough moisture. Go ahead. There you go. And then when you guys come. So basically, you can go ahead and grab a piece of dough as you're ready. What we're going to do is start just basically by rolling it out very easily. If it's too much dough, we'll work with a smaller one. And if you're coming in late, I will cut you a break and give you a piece of dough. You're going away? He's gone. Okay. So, anche lì possono lavorare se vuoi. Molto via. Okay, so just try to make a nice long rod, like that. They can use that space there. Come on over. Here you are. Just moisten your hands a bit because it is a little dry. And there you are. There you are. Okay, so let me just cover this for 1 second. Yeah, once you have it, just cut it into a couple of logs like that size there. I'll come there and just show you as well. Just gonna be everywhere. So you're just going to make a log about 1 centimeter thick. Okay, perfect. Okay, so cut them in pieces just about 10 centimeters. So you're just going like this. And now we're gonna cut little nubs like that. So the size of these little nubs will determine the size of your cavatelli. Bigger ones will make bigger cavatelli, smaller ones will make littler ones. And you need to arm yourself with one of these knives. You can also not do it with a knife, but I like using the knife because it creates the ridge. We can make them as well with just our fingers. So once we have that, we're gonna cover them just so that they stay. You can use that as well, so they stay nice and moist. Does everybody have a little one of these guys to work with? So, yeah, you can grab some of these. You're okay? You can grab some of these ones. Come work next to me. Here you are. C'è un altro coltello. Posso prendere questo? Okay. So you can use that one. So So just grab a little guy like that. What we're going to do is basically press down and just roll and drag like that. So you're pressing down and you're rolling and dragging, and there you have it. Just like that. Let's see. So yeah, you're pressing down and then dragging. Pressing down and then dragging. So if we were making orecchiette, we would press down and then just flip that onto our thumb to make an orecchietta. I'm sorry. So just like that. And the very cool thing is that this same type of dough makes, so you're going down and like that. So semola macinata, which is a hard wheat flour, is grown in Puglia in the southern regions of Italy, but also in Ruben's area, which is Liguria in northern Italy. It sort of really thrives in a hot, dry climate. So the interesting thing is that with a very similar recipe, maybe not using spelt, but you might add chestnut flour, you can make trofie. So all of sort of the coastal area of Italy uses that same type of flour, which is a hard wheat flour. So with this same recipe, we can make cavatelli, capunti, orecchiette, strascinati. So we've got orecchiette and cavatelli. Elena, what do you call it when you cook cavatelli and orecchiette together? Maritati. Maritati. So there you are, like that. You able to do it? So what you want to do is just press it and go down like this, and then you take it and you flip it onto your thumb like that to make orecchiette. So you can see why that shape was developed later, and that one was the original one.
Can you show me orecchiette?
Yes. So you're here, you're just going to press down and drag just like that. Once it's on, you take it and then you just flip it. So like I was saying, you can actually make it just with your thumb, the cavatelli and the orecchiette as well. Just depends on what you like, but I prefer using a knife because I find I get more texture. Okay. And then with the same dough, like I could show you, you can make something called capunti, which is like that. And there we are. Yes. Just like that. It's just basically dragging it. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Thank you very much for coming. And if you'd like, you can take some dough. I've got some extra one, and so you can practice at home. Okay, thank you for coming. You want to? Thank you. You can take it
We're gonna make it at home.
Make it at home. Yes, you can take some dough after come.
The recipe after.
Yes, yeah. Francesco, maybe you can put the recipe up on the screen, yeah. And like I said, we have extra dough, so if you'd like to take some, you can take some and practice at home. Okay. So what the spelt actually does to dough, it adds a bit of nuttiness. It's going to taste a little toastier. A similar flour that's used often in Puglia is grano arso, which is sort of like a burnt wheat. It's basically born of the poorest tradition of trying to be frugal and really, really using everything. And it's flour that is harvested that is collected after the harvest has been done and after the fields were burnt down. And it's made with that burnt wheat, so it adds a real particular flavor to dough. And you can use a little bit of that mixed in with semola macinata and also make a very particular type of pasta. So Ruben is just starting to cook some pasta. I made this sauce for us with just olive oil, like our olive oil, a bit of garlic, and then our tomatoes. These will cook down a bit and then just completely crush. But I'm excited for you to try them. The sheep milk ricotta, this is Sicilian. It's grated, and it's sort of interesting the way this recipe works, because typically you might add cheese as a type of flavoring, but in this recipe it's actually an ingredient. So you almost use as much ricotta salata as you do tomato sauce. Whereas typically, like, or you would use just a bit of cheese to give it a bit of flavor, right? This pasta is made in one of our locations. It's made fresh every day using the exact same ingredients which I've used there, but of course it's pressed through a machine, so you'll see that it's a type of cavatello that has the ridges on it. And that works really well with the sauce because it kind of picks up all of the flavors. Are there any questions for us about the pasta making or the flour or any of the ingredients that we talked about? Yes? That we make? Well, complicated, I would say possibly tortellini, just because it has quite a process. So we make a traditional type of tortellini from Bologna, so the most authentic one, which requires Parmigiano Reggiano, prosciutto di Parma, mortadella, pork loin, and we use the exact recipe that is mandated by the Academy to make the filling. But then the shape itself is quite tricky. We try to keep them the same size as what they're traditionally made, which is 5 per tablespoon. And we're starting this week, actually, and we have a team of us working with Chef Ruben and myself. We're all getting around the table, and we're making tortellini all completely by hand. It's my favorite pasta to make, but I guess that's the most complicated in terms of getting all of the ingredients and getting the shape right, because unless you fold it properly, you get the right belly, then you end up with like a capelletto. Yes?
For this pasta, would you recommend like having ridges, or does it
Yes, so he's asking if we recommend having the ridges or not in a pasta. I think that it's a lot to do with personal preference. It depends on what you like. I really like having a bite. Of course, as Italians, we are very proud and will fiercely defend how we make pasta where we come from. So it really depends on what you grew up with, and you'll just say like you will really, only ridges, but it's very a lot to do with what you like on your palate. And as you're making it, as you're trying to make it at home, I would encourage you to try different sizes and different thicknesses as you're making it, tasting it, and seeing what you like. The important thing is that you like it and that you're making it. Yes? Just slightly if it's dry. Like the drier it is, the more there are differences. If it's at the same level of dryness or freshness, you won't really see a difference. If it's super dry, it will take, the ridges will make it a little quicker. I think, so sorry, I forgot to repeat your question, but his question was whether there is a difference in cooking. I believe, if I heard you correctly, if there's a difference in cooking time from the ridged cavatello to a regular cavatello. So I would say the ridged cavatello, if they're at a similar level of dryness, will be slightly quicker. Any other question? When you make this pasta, it is absolutely important that you let it dry. So you don't make it and cook it. You will not have the right texture. It'll taste very gummy. So if, say, we were making this, even this that we made yesterday, it's important that you dry it to get the right type of texture, because it's the type of pasta that is intended to be consumed once it's a little dry. It depends on the conditions. With us, like this was overnight, it still has a bit of moisture, and then it depends on how you want to store it. So say that you're making this at home and you want to freeze it, you just want to dry it to the point where it doesn't stick. You can put it in your freezer on a sheet pan and then Ziploc it. But because it doesn't have any flour and ensuring that there isn't any mold growing on it and you have the right drying conditions, you can completely dry it and just put it in your pantry. Yes? Yeah.
Is your garlic Ontario garlic?
The garlic is Ontario garlic. So we really tried to go, as local as possible with Ontario produce. And then ingredients where we see, like, say something like the ricotta squanta, which if you want to try after, come on up. And if you're really brave, you can try it and smell it. It's quite particular. Like something like this that we cannot get here, then we will bring it in. Or something like that tomato, I really think is like an experience. So we have to bring it in, or the olive oil, right? Any other question? Yes? So the Coratina olive, its main characteristics is it's quite spicy and it's quite pungent. This year, in speaking to our producer, they had what they call a stellar year because the olive oil really expresses the flavor of the olive, which is spicy. It is picked before it's fully ripe, so you'll really taste it when you'll feel it at the back of your throat, and it's quite bitter. I was trying to at the beginning we didn't go too deeply into it, but it's important when you choose an olive oil that you take these things into consideration. So when you're cooking something like the type of food that we'll be tasting, it really complements all of these flavors because they come from the same place and they're sort of intended to be served together or to be served, with something like a bread like this. It really leaves an imprint. It's important to consider that it's not just something that you're throwing in a recipe. Like taste it and understand that it's an ingredient that you're putting in that is going to impart flavor into things. So, yeah. Yes?
How do you dry the on the counter? Or?
Yeah, you can leave it on the counter. What I like to do is use a tea towel so that it absorbs a bit of the moisture and then just kind of shake them every once in a while. I don't really like using a lot of additional, any flour really, because I don't like that starchiness when I'm cooking it. So just air drying it is the best, yeah. Yes? Moisture, like really trying to keep in mind a constant temperature, limiting moisture, not too hot, not too cold. Ventilation is always great. And of course, like contaminants that are present in just in general. It's a lot easier with pasta that doesn't have eggs. You would need a very controlled environment, of course, with egg-based pasta. Yes?
So this one, you would say using daily for drying to
If in the pantry, it would be more than a day because you want it to be completely dry, right? If you're going to put it in the freezer, just a couple of hours is enough, just to make sure that it's not sticky and it's got enough dryness. Yeah, depends on the conditions. Yes.
What would happen to the pasta
If you did not dry it out, nothing. Like you can put it in the. What do you mean? What would be the alternative? Like putting it in the fridge, not dry, or? And using it right away, like if I were to use the dough that I just mixed, it's quite tough. So if I was kneading it the proper way, I would continue to knead it till I felt I couldn't build any more gluten and the dough was very hard. And I would be like, there is no way I can knead this any further. It has to rest or I won't be able to use it. The resting period allows all the enzymes in the dough to relax and renders it very malleable again. So from that point, then you can shape it. If I were to make it right after I mixed it, it just wouldn't be elastic and it wouldn't lend itself to the shapes. And it's the same with egg-based pasta. It has to just relax a bit. Yes? Yeah, like I was saying, you can really do any kind of. She's asking if it's possible to use any other kinds of flour, like to make this shape of pasta. Not necessarily for this particular shape of pasta. Italy will produce different types of flours. You might note that, say in Emilia-Romagna, we have soft wheat. So we make all of the egg-based pasta in Emilia-Romagna because they use soft flour. And soft flour doesn't have enough bite, so it needs to be supplemented by the proteins in eggs to get its bite. And that region will develop shapes that work best with that type of mix of egg and flour. So you have all your soft doughs like tagliatelle, like lasagne, like Yes, ravioli. Whereas because it really sort of highlights how regional and local Italian cuisine is, because if you go to southern Italy, all of the pastas that are from southern Italy will be pastas that are typically not made with egg. Because hard flours like semolina have such a high protein content, they don't need the egg. So you've got enough bite. And the flavor is different. So the shapes also change to adapt to the flour. So yeah, so you can and you can't. There's a bit of flexibility as long as you are speaking about flours that have similar properties.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.